A prenuptial agreement is an agreement entered into by a couple before the marriage, that one of them or both of them are trying to protect their assets or income in the event that they separate or divorce in the future.
What kind of people want prenups?
Traditionally, it was the wealthier individual or wealthy individuals who wanted a prenup. Often one of them wasn't English, because in other countries prenups or a form of prenups are more common. But these days, more and more people, all types of people, are entering into prenuptial agreements. They may be entering into their second marriage and they want to protect assets for their children, their adult children. Or it may be a young couple, both working, who wish to regulate their financial arrangements during their marriage, or possibly to protect one party's family assets. So all types of individuals.
I understand that a lot of people on the continent enter into an agreement about how they hold property before their marriage. Is that the same as a prenup?
It's actually very different from a prenuptial agreement. You're right, they're often, in countries such as France or Spain, civil law jurisdictions where the law is very different, and people would enter into what's called a marriage contract. And what that is trying to do is regulate the arrangements with third parties, so creditors. So for example, if one spouse was entering into a business to protect the other spouse in the event that one becomes bankrupt. So that would be the main reason for a marriage contract. However, there are implications in the event that they divorce. But the purpose is very different, whereas in the UK, prenuptial agreements, the main reason is to protect assets in the event of a divorce. But a lot of people enter into marriage contracts thinking that abroad, and they come to England thinking that it's going to have the same effect as a prenup, and it isn't.
So a prenup's legally binding now?
As the law currently stands, the court retain a wide discretion as to whether they are going to enforce the terms of a prenuptial agreement. However, with recent cases, in particular a case called Radmacher, which went to the Supreme Court in 2010, the court's very much looking at the prenup, and unless one of the parties can show that it's unfair for them to be held to the terms, then the court are going to uphold the terms. So in terms of advising clients who are thinking of signing a prenup, but it's not in their interest to do so, they sign it, in terms of my advice, they're signing it on the basis they will be upheld to the terms in the future. But likewise, if I'm advising a client who very much wants the prenup to protect their assets and income in the future, I would advise them to look at certain things and do it, for example, way in advance of the wedding. There are certain things they can do to make it more likely that the prenup will be upheld in the future. It's very much something in the public eye, and indeed the Law Commission have already reported and have recommended that a certain type of prenuptial agreement should be brought into statute. So it's something that is very much going to remain in the public eye.
So what are those things you can do to increase the chances of the prenup being legally binding?
It's important that each future spouse has the opportunity of proper time to consider the terms of the prenup and take independent legal advice. So the more time that the prenup is first raised before the wedding, the better. And ideally, they shouldn't be signing the agreement a few days before the wedding. Each spouse would need to go to independent lawyers and would need to give full details of all relevant circumstances, including full details of their assets and income, so that the other person has the opportunity to think whether the terms of the agreement are fair or not. And ideally, the terms are properly negotiated where neither party is worried about being under duress to sign.
You mentioned you shouldn't leave the negotiations too close to the wedding. So when would you advise that they start the process?
Ideally, as soon as one person is thinking of getting married. There are lots of reasons for that. I've already mentioned the importance of enforceability of the prenup in the future. But in terms of the actual negotiations, I think when people first come and see me and say, I'd like to have a prenup, they don't really understand what it's going to be like in practice. They think it's an easy one piece of paper that each party can sign and it will take just half an hour to draft it. If a prenup is going to be worth its weight, then it's important that people have a chance to reflect and negotiate. But also, in terms of the build-up to a wedding, as we all know, there's a lot to do before a wedding. And the last thing a couple wants to be doing is talking to their lawyers and negotiating what they're worth, as some people see, at the same time as they're sending wedding invitations out, arranging wedding banns being read. So the more it can be done in advance, the better it is for the couple's relationship. And certainly I've had a number of clients who have found it incredibly stressful. And one of the reasons is because it's been left so close to the wedding.